Well, Kevin, when this show started, you and I made a pact, which is we will see every M3GAN movie released in theaters. And this week we honored that pact.
I don't remember making that pact, but we did see a new M3GAN movie on Monday night together. We had a little double date with our partners.
Yeah, and this is a movie that has a lot of ideas in it. May surprise you for a movie that I think is mostly designed to be a lot of fun, but we were sort of laughing as the movie went along with just how many concepts in the film are things we have talked about on the show. And so we were really excited when we heard from the movie studio that we would actually be able to talk to the star of M3GAN herself, Allison Williams, about this movie.
And I will say, my guess is that this is the only movie of 2025 that will contain a reference to the paperclip maximizer in it. That is how deep down the rabbit hole
the screenwriter and director Gerard Johnstone went here.
So M3GAN 2.0, a movie about AI that managed to get a lot of the inside terminology of the AI world into its script.
It comes out June 27th, but in the meantime, here's Allison Williams.
Allison Williams, welcome to Hard Fork.
Oh my gosh, what an honor. Thank you so much for having me.
It's such a pleasure. Casey and I had a double date on Monday night. We both went out to see M3GAN 2.0, had a great time. And what struck me about the movie is it was actually quite impressively literate about some of the nerdier, more arcane parts of the AI and tech universe. So I'm just curious, how much research did you do going into this of concepts like instrumental convergence, which only, a couple hundred real AI nerds in San Francisco talk about?
And some actors and actresses now. We are evolving. A lot of research. On the first movie, I did a lot more research into robotics and engineering and AI and women in tech and all of those things because I couldn't be farther from a woman in STEM. I'm a woman in English and film and television. But and this one I did much more of a physical preparation. But yes, I mean, to be able to speak cogently about these things and also make it sound like you know what you're talking about, it's always smart to just keep up with the reading and what there is to know about what's going on. But yeah, I give a lot of that credit to Gerard. He doesn't just do the superficial pass where it's gobbledygook that means nothing. We really do want exactly what just happened. We want praise from the 100 people who know what we're talking about. And honestly, we can go home now. This was really all we needed. Thank you guys so much for having me.
I mean, watching it, I did have that feeling of, they put real ideas in this movie. It really does feel like it has been keeping track of a lot of the big discussions that are happening about the role of tech in society. Your character, Gemma, becomes a bit of a screen time crusader as this movie begins. She's lobbying against smartphones in schools. I'm curious, how much of that resonates with you personally?
So much. I think Gemma and Jonathan Haidt would have gone on a tour together, just, talking about these issues. I really think that the first movie was sort of posing a hypothetical that then by the time it came out was starting to feel very prescient and kind of urgent. This movie is sort of saying okay, hypothetical over, we are here. Now let's have kind of an ethical conversation and a moral conversation about now what, sort of about parenthood and stewardship and the parallels in the first movie between Gemma's motherhood, so to speak, of Katie, her niece, and of M3GAN is just still at work in this movie, except it's an even more loaded word, I will say, without spoiling anything. And it's definitely trying to fully entertain you in the theater and just you're on a ride. And then when you get home and you get into bed, you're so I guess we should be expressing a little more gratitude to the Roomba. I think we should be.
Yes.
And I did the other day when I rode in one for the first time, say thank you to my Waymo, I think.
You got to say thank you to the Waymos. They're keeping track.
You got to. Listen, I feel grateful for anyone who gets me anywhere safely, including an inanimate line of code or many, many lines of code and cameras. So I feel it is definitely asking us to think critically about our ethical responsibility. It feels like it's asking us to enter into or realize that we have already entered into a relational positioning rather than a parasitic one where we can just use and take and take and take and expect versus being in relationship with, and it sounds crazy, but it is sort of the main question of the movie, is to be in relationship with these types of ways of existing that we have brought to life, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, and I will say, like, this does not feel like a far future scenario to me. In fact, just recently, OpenAI announced that they're doing a partnership with Mattel, the toy company. And there have been lots of companies.
I got that article like 150 times.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Like for an official like merch tie-in, are they going to do like a M3GAN doll?
I don't know. It hasn't come up yet, but it felt like when I read that headline, I was like, well, sometimes it takes a little longer than this for sci-fi to become reality, but this feels like it's part of our marketing cycle.
Now, I think we have kids around the same age. Mine's 3.
Yes.
Would you give your kid an OpenAI or just an AI in general toy?
Okay, well, here's the deal. So, as you know, with a kid at this age, our son is like incredibly curious. And I love this side of him. And I love how inquisitive he is and also how dissatisfied he is with any surface level. He can feel when you're phoning something in or when you just don't have expertise. And in his least condescending way possible, he'll always ask for like supporting documents and evidence. And he'll be like, let's go.
They really do the
flip to
citation needed thing a lot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's flip to the back. Let's go through a bibliography. Let's like see where we can go a little deeper here. Let's go past the Wikipedia of it all and get some primary sources. So often when I am trying to explain something to him like jet propulsion, which he asked me about last week, I turn to, as we all do, ChatGPT. And I will speak into the speaking thing for like a hands-free thing if I'm multitasking. And I'll say, in a way that a 3.5-year-old can understand, can you explain how a rocket launches and how jet propulsion works? And then Arlo watches this little orb on the phone just like going in and out. It's like the least stimulating graphic experience on the planet. And yet his eyes are I'm watching something so intense happen. Like his brain is not able to comprehend what this interaction is that's taking place. And he's hearing all this information and it's distilled perfectly and it's timed perfectly and it's exactly what he wants to know. And then he'll ask a follow-up question. And then the look on his face is so troubling that I will like cut it off and make him stop talking. The other day, we were talking about a subject. I can't remember what it was. It might have been something related to like animal husbandry or something. It's a long story. I've been talking about baby deers a lot. Anyway, so he said, "Can you ask Chapatiti?" And I was like, Chapatiti? Who is Chapatiti? And then he was like, the person who talks from your phone and answers my questions. And I was like, oh my God, we are finished using this technology as parents. This is upsetting. And honestly, like, this is free for you, OpenAI, but Chapatiti is like a very cute and very benign sounding nickname for an extremely powerful machine.
I love that story, and it just makes me curious about the tension, because I feel like the tension that you're describing is also in the movie of, on the one hand,
that's what I was just going to say.
Yeah, like you have this thing that is able to mesmerize your son, answer his question. Kids are famously curious. They often exhaust their parents' patience, but now you have something that can just explain everything to them, forever. That's kind of the promise of M3GAN 2, right? Is, hey, let me take a little bit of this parenting work off your hand, be an extremely supportive friend, commit a little light murder for you if necessary.
Totally.
So I'm curious, in the sort of real world, when you're away from the killer doll and you just sort of have this sort of mysterious new technology, how you navigate that tension.
Well, it's really interesting. Honestly, I never get tired of explaining stuff to him if it's in my wheelhouse. The times that I reach for ChatGPT is when he has wandered beyond, I can't explain gravity, period. I can't explain it to a 3.5-year-old for sure. You know who can? ChatGPT. So what I used to do was I would look it up on ChatGPT and then I would sort of translate it so the information was coming from me. And then there was a time when I needed my hands and I just did the voice activated thing and I didn't think about it. And then now here we are. I think our strategy is to limit the amount of stimulus to an amount that he can tolerate. And he and I talk all the time about overstimulation. When he was like 2.5, he was running around the house at breakneck speed and he was like, Mama, I think I'm overstimulated. And I was like, you have nailed it. That is exactly what we're seeing right now. And so in the same way, I sort of think that an amount of knowledge that is delivered in such a confusing vehicle can also be overstimulating. Like, I think there's such a thing as like just overdoing it, being overwhelmed by the amount of information that's coming at you. And as anyone with a toddler will tell you, often the best amount to give them is just enough for them to wonder more and fill in the gaps for themselves, because sometimes our instinct to over-explain things deprives them of the opportunity to answer some of it on their own. And the things they come up with are so extraordinary, and the questions they end up having. So I try to remind myself that less is more. And he's just learning so much every single day, and a little bit every day is totally enough.
So that's how you feel about AI as a parent.
Yes.
I'm curious, as a creative and a person who makes and acts in movies, how you feel about it. Obviously, AI in Hollywood have had tensions going back years.
Yeah.
You've now been in 2 films featuring AI as a major theme. And I'm
Yep.
curious, when you put your actor hat on, like, what you feel about this technology.
It's obviously intimidating. Like, my mind goes instantly, of course, to job security, because I'm like, okay, what about my job can't be performed by an algorithm or an AI or a computer or something like that? And the answer, honestly, is like a little bit embarrassing, but it's the parts of us that are flawed and that make mistakes and that don't do things perfectly, like a hair out of place that looks normal, or a smudge of lipstick, or a lack of continuity here, or a slurred word occasionally in a sentence, the way we all speak, kind of, or handwriting that's not consistent. All of those things are so human. I kind of rely on the tiny moments where I'm bad at my job to save my job, frankly, because I think that's how art ends up feeling human to me, is the parts of it that aren't executed perfectly.
My sort of question in this vein was like, a few years from now, it's time to make M3GAN 5.0. They come to you, they say, Allison, we have so much footage of you. We have so many.
Oh, I've been anticipating this since the first movie.
You
by
have,
the way.
okay.
Keep going with your question.
Sure. So, I mean, if they come to you, they say, look, we're going to write you, a really nice check, and you don't actually have to do anything. You can, stay at home, go make another movie, like whatever you might like to do. We'll just sort of make M3GAN 5.0 using your digital likeness. What's your, gut reaction to that kind of offer?
I've actually contemplated this from like a contract standpoint, that I would want my likeness compensated, first of all, to the same amount that my actual personhood would be. So that's the first one, is I would want to make it as cost prohibitive, not to say that I'm like enormously expensive to hire. I just mean like, I would not want it to be the vastly cheaper option. And I actually think for now, at least, it is the more laborious and difficult option. So luckily I feel safe there, unless you're going for an uncanny kind of thing. But even for the M3GAN movies, like, we do a combination of human and machine. It's crucial to our achievement of M3GAN, and for Amelia, and for all of the iterations of all of these little beings that we have in this movie. I don't want to give them all away, but they're all a collaboration. But there will always have to be, I think, a human component for all of it, just because of what it is. And so I think that even if they want to do, let's say, like, something happens to Gemma, she's no longer alive, and she's reanimated as AI let's say that's the situation in M3GAN 5.
Yeah.
I may have just written it with you guys on this podcast. What do I do? Like, put a flag in it? Like, IP, this is mine?
Yeah, that's yours.
No, that
I
belongs
own
to the
this.
Hard
Okay,
Fork
great.
podcast now. Sorry.
Kevin,
We don't have room for just more cooks in the kitchen. That's fine. It would be an awesome collab.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think, like, if that were the case, they would still, at this point, need me to be involved, need someone's physical body to be involved for it to work, even from, like, a motion capture standpoint. But I do want to, like, I guess I should copyright my likeness. I don't know. I already watch cuts of trailers for movies that I'm in that have, like, lines of dialogue that aren't in the movie that are said by an AI version of my voice that don't end up making it to air. They're just in the draft versions of them, and then I go in and record them. That is always really strange because it doesn't exactly sound like me. But for a second, I'm like, wait, I don't remember saying that. Oh, okay, that's AI. And it's just so rudimentary now But yeah, there as of now, there has to be then a human pass on it to make it sound, worse, I guess, in a way that's more normal and better, conversely.
I want to ask like a follow-up related to kind of how different the two films are. So M3GAN 1 feels very much like a horror film. M3GAN 2.0 feels a lot more like an action film. To me, it was feeling like kind of Mission Impossible across with Terminator 2. I wonder, as you're reading both scripts, like you read the script for M3GAN 2.0, do you feel as an actor like, oh, like the genre has evolved here, and so my performance, it needs to evolve? And if you did feel that way, if maybe that is exactly the sort of thing that's going to be hard to translate when it comes time to make M3GAN 5 and the genre has maybe shifted yet again, and they don't actually have the raw materials they need to do the performance that you would have done.
Exactly. I mean, that's a great point. I think the thing that's fun about this movie is that we started having conversations about what it was going to be before the first one even came out. And the clear mandate from like every corner of our world was there's going to be a second doll. And so the question then was like, okay, let's extrapolate from there. Like, obviously, we're in a world where T2 exists, so let's not make like a direct one-to-one reboot of that movie. Let's figure out how to make it interesting and also like live in our world. And then as Gerard started to put the pillars of the plot together in a way that felt so logical to him and is so unpredictable as you start watching the movie to everyone else, and makes for such a fun and unexpected and unpredictable ride. He realized that we had to be in an action world for reasons I don't want to spoil. The stakes just get really bigger. The world gets bigger, and the stakes get really bigger. That's what a Yale education can give you, and not just a Yale education, an English major. The stakes get a lot higher, and the world expanded in such a way that it kind of, the story like pushed us into action. It wasn't the tail wagging the dog in the other way.
I will
once
say,
we realized we were in that genre, like it was a really cool thing to realize that we had created a tone in the first movie and characters that could be transported, like with, as long as there's still that thriller DNA in it. It can be like translated into a different genre. And now as we're, talking about possibly being lucky enough to do another one, we're sort of asking that question again of like, okay, so where to? Where do we go next? Like, where should we take this little team of misfits? Where should we creep other people out in the future? And it's a really fun way to iterate the franchise.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that stuck out to me about M3GAN 2.0 as compared to the first one is it just feels like a much more complicated moral. I feel like if the takeaway from the first movie was like AI bad, like there was some complication of that in the second one, where I don't want to spoil any details, but like there are points at which like AI is part of the solution. So did you feel like the script that you were reading and then performing was a more complicated, like, is the moral of M3GAN 2.0, to the extent that the film has a moral, something different than AI bad?
Yeah, for sure. I think it had to be, because I think making a movie with the moral AI bad would be like a deeply dick move in an era where AI is like, it would be sort of like, I don't know, it would just be obnoxious to make a movie that's like, psych, we think this is bad and should go away, but you're stuck with it. So, you know what I mean? It would just be counterproductive. Whereas I feel like the movie we made is asking a much more nuanced question. It just feels like, we're all on kind of a similar moral journey to the one that Gemma's on. And by the end of the movie, without giving anything away, we hear exactly how she feels on the topic. And it is, shocker, very different from the way it is at the beginning of the movie. Not that being cautious is a bad idea, but just that there needed to be asterisks to her argument because of where we are as a society, and there just are certain realities to that she needed to contend with.
Yeah.
In the first movie, there's a wonderful scene of a kind of like combination dance murder. In this one, and
one of those.
And this one, I desperately want to spoil, but I won't. There's an incredible song that brings the house down. How important is it to the creative team for there to be an iconic moment of gay culture in every M3GAN film?
Extremely important, but it's not engineered like that. It's just a moment where she behaves in just a kind of a shocking use of the arts, I guess, in a moment where, especially when it's coming from tech, it's kind of shocking. I had this realization the other day that I played a character on Girls who broke into spontaneous song to the detriment of everyone around her quite frequently, and like never asked permission, and it was never the right time. And that like I'm almost being like karmically punished by watching this other
is
doll.
your cross to bear, yes.
It is sort of like I've now brought another being to life that does this, where she'll spontaneously dance and or sing at certain points in a movie when it's never feeling quite right. Anyway, I think that it's important to us that we make a movie that feels so tonally specific, like making sure that we hit the same tone as the first movie was like priority number one. Because if we became too self-aware and too in on the joke and too winking at the camera, it would be a totally boring movie to watch and feel like exhausting. And so we knew that like eventually the camp would be there and the self-awareness and the in on itself would be there, but it would only be there if we executed completely earnestly on the story and the emotional beats as they were there. And I think watching women with really strong personalities committing to an emotional beat and then like rising to the occasion in their strength is in and of itself sort of a celebration somehow of queer culture.
Absolutely.
And so it feels like making sure that we just like stick to that in these movies is not at all an effort to, I don't know, placate anybody, but ends up just sort of like taking us in that direction every single time.
I'm glad you did. Hey, that's the end of this clip. If you liked what you saw, head on over to our page and subscribe, and you can get the full podcast. We do a show like this almost every week on tech and the future. Head on over there now and subscribe.